Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of McDonald Math. Today we are going to go over multiplying mixed numbers. So go ahead, get out your notebooks and a pencil, whiteboards and a marker so we can go over our notes and a few example problems. All right everyone, so hopefully you have out your notebooks. We're gonna take a few notes here, go over some examples. So this is for multiplying mixed numbers, okay? And you can see on this first screen, there are two steps we have to follow. That's not all there is, but we'll go on to the next screen in a second. So for step number one, whenever we have a number, and I'll write it over here so you can see it clearer, 3 1/4, okay? When you have a whole number next to a fraction like this, this is called a mixed number. And when we are multiplying mixed numbers, we can't multiply like we did with fractions and fractions. So in other words, when we had fractions like this, 1/2 times 3/4. If you remember our previous video, there was only two steps in a problem like this: multiply the numerator and denominator. So we would multiply and we'd get 3/8. Well, the problem is when we have mixed numbers, we can't do that, at least not right away. We have to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. And if you remember your notes from our previous video, an improper fraction is when the numerator is larger than the denominator. So we look here, step one, use the spin wheel method. Now, whatever your teacher is teaching you, if it works for you, make sure you use that. This is how I teach my students. So the spin wheel method, we have a mixed number, 3 1/4. I'm going to write down, so you can see here, multiply and add. I put the multiplication symbol on the bottom between the denominator and my whole number. And I put the addition symbol up here between the numerator and my whole number. And you'll notice I drew this arrow spinning clockwise. And I'll show you why in a second. Well, what I do is I follow these steps. Multiply, add, keep the same. So I'm gonna multiply 4 times 3. Well, that gets me 12. Well, I want you to think of it like this. That 12 is going to follow the spin wheel all the way up, and on the way up, it's gonna stop up here, next to the addition sign. So now we have 12 plus 1. We add the numerator. 12 plus 1 gets us 13. It's gonna follow down right here. Now we have 13. So we've multiplied, we've added, and the last part it says keep the same. Well, you'll notice the denominator here is 4. We keep the denominator the same. It's gonna stay 4. So now we have 13/4. This is the process for how you change mixed numbers into improper fractions, okay? Let's look at step 2 here. Now that we've changed this 3 1/4 into 13/4, now we can multiply straight across like you see here. But look at this note that I put here. You need to have proper or improper fractions to multiply across. In other words, I can't multiply 3 1/4 times 1/2. I can't just go straight across like that. I'll have to convert this into an improper fraction first. Once you've done that, and both numbers are now proper or improper fractions, you can complete step 2 and multiply straight across. Okay, very good. Now, once we've multiplied straight across, that's gonna lead us to step number 3, okay? So let's say that we multiply straight across and we get a number like 49/5 after we've multiplied straight across for both fractions. If after multiplying you have an improper fraction still, you're going to use division, because remember in our previous video I talked about how improper fractions, we think of division. So I have 49/5. Well, I'm going to turn this into a division problem. You can see here I have my 49 and my 5. Now this is where knowing your basic division and multiplication skills will really come in handy. So I have to ask myself, how many times can 5 go into 49 without getting bigger than 49? Well, I know that 9 times 5 is 45. So I'm going to put that right there and subtract. I get 4. Well, now you'll notice I labeled these for us here. I'll underline them. So after we divide, our quotient, the number on top, that is our new whole number. See that? 9, 9. Our remainder of the division problem, that becomes our new numerator, the top number of our fraction. And our divisor, the outside number, that's our denominator. So we take the numbers from our division and we put it together for our new mixed number, which is our answer. Now, special note for you here, okay? If, for step number 3, you have a proper fraction, let's say I multiplied straight across for step number 2, and instead of 49 over 5, I got 5 over 45. This is a proper fraction. I do not need to do division and follow these steps. I'm done. Now, if on a quiz or test, or your teacher tells you to simplify or reduce this fraction, you will need to check to see if it can be simplified or reduced. However, if it is a proper fraction, you would be completed. Now, the second part in orange here says, if for step 3, after you divide, so let's say we've divided here, okay? Your numerator is 0, then the answer is the whole number. So let's say I divide, and instead of a 4 here, it's a 0. Well, the remainder is your numerator. You wouldn't write 9 and 0 over 5. Your answer would simply be the whole number. And if you're confused by that, don't worry. I'm going to show you an example here in a second that talks about that. So make sure you get this down, and in a second, I'm going to go over a few examples. Okay, so I recommend writing these down in your notes, just in case you want to view the step-by-step process and just get familiar with it. But here are 2 example problems. Let's look at number 1. We have a problem, 2 1/4 times 1 1/3. Remember, in order to solve this, I need to change these mixed numbers into improper fractions. So we do the spin wheel method. Come over here, I'm going to take my denominator and multiply 2 times 4, that gets me 8. It's going to follow the spin wheel up, 8 plus the numerator now, 1 is 9. 9, my denominator stays the same, 4, 9 over 4 for this first mixed number. Now for the second one, same strategy. 3 times 1, that gets me 3. Follow the spin wheel, stops up here. 3 plus 1 is 4. Denominator stays the same, 4 over 3. 4 over 3. So now my improper fractions are 9 over 4 times 4 over 3. I've completed step 1. Now for step 2, multiply straight across. 9 times 4, that gets me 36. 4 times 3, that gets me 12. So now I have an improper fraction of 36 over 12. Now, you remember me saying in the last problem here in the special note, if you divide and your remainder is 0, the answer is the whole number. Well, this is the problem I was talking about. So look at this here. We have 36 over 12. Now, when I divide this, if you look at a multiplication chart, or maybe you just know, 12 times 3 is 36. So I'm going to put my 3 up here, multiply, 12 times 3, 36, put it underneath, I have 0. Well, again, you're not going to write 3 and 0 over 12. Your answer is simply the whole number. And the reason it's just the whole number is because we know this is how many times 12 goes into 36. So whenever you divide and you have a 0 as a remainder, the answer is your whole number. Let's take a look at our example for number 2. We have 3 3/4 times 2 1/2. Spin wheel method. Denominator times the whole number. 4 times 3 is 12. Goes up the spin wheel, stops. 12 plus the numerator, 12 plus 3 is 15. Denominator stays the same, 15 over 4. Now let's do the second mixed number. denominator times the whole number. 2 times 2 is 4. Goes up the spin wheel. 4 plus 1 is 5. Denominator stays the same. 2, 5 over 2. We've completed step 1. Now we have 15 over 4 times 5 over 2. Ready for step 2. We can multiply straight across. 15 times 5, that's 75. 4 times 2, that gets us 8. So now we have the improper fraction of 75 over 8. We know improper fractions means to divide, so we're going to divide 75 by 8. I know that 8 times 9 gets me 72. That's as close as I can get. So put my 9 up here. 9 times 8 is 72. I put that here. I subtract. I get 3. Well, I have my 3 numbers here. Remember, your quotient, the number on top, that's your whole number. The remainder is your numerator, and the divisor is your denominator, 9 3/8. So copy these down if you want, familiarize yourself with the steps, and get your whiteboards ready, because now we're going to go over a few problems. All right, hopefully you have your whiteboards and markers ready. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to use your notes, try and solve this first problem. Go ahead and press pause if you need to, and when you're ready, press play, and we'll go over it. Okay, I'm assuming you've pressed play, and we can review here. So remember, first thing I need to do is change these. What are these called? Mixed numbers, remember, mixed numbers. I need to change them into improper fractions. I'm going to use my spin wheel method. Write my symbols, and if writing the symbols down helps you remember, by all means, do so. Okay, so denominator times the whole number, that gets me 9. 3 times 3 is 9. It's going to follow up the spin wheel and add the numerator. 9 plus 2, that gets me 11. Denominator stays the same. 3, 11 over 3. Let's see what this one is. What's my first move? If you said denominator times the whole number, you'd be correct. 4 times 1 is 4. Goes up. Add the numerator. 4 plus 1 is 5. Denominator stays the same. Now we have turned these into improper fractions. We can go on to step 2, which is multiply straight across. I'm going to multiply 11 times 5, and I'm going to multiply 3 times 4. 11 times 5 for my numerators, that's going to get me 55. 3 times 4 for my denominators, it's going to get me 12. So now I have an improper fraction of 55 over 12. Well, now time for division. I'm going to divide 12 by 55. And if you need to use your multiplication charts, go right ahead. I know that 12 times 4 gets me 48. 12 times 5 is 60. We can't go above this, remember, so we're going to have to use 4. So I put my 4 up here. 12 times 4 gets me 48. I subtract. I get 7. Now remember, I have my 3 numbers left. Your quotient, the top number, that is your new whole number. So it's going to be 4, and your remainder is your numerator. Your divisor is your denominator. So my final answer for our original problem, 3 2/3 times 1 1/4, is 4 7/12. Hopefully you got that right. If you did, great job. If you didn't, make sure you review those notes, go over the example problems, Thanks for stopping by for another episode of McDonald Math.